The crystal wine glass nearly slipped from my fingers when my father's voice cut clean through the soft hum of the restaurant. "Tonight," he said, lifting his glass with that familiar, polished smile, "we celebrate our real daughter. The successful one." The words didn't echo, they rang sharp and hollow, drowning out the polite laughter that followed. Around the long oak table, heads turned in unison toward Tiffany, admiration lighting their faces like it had been rehearsed. My steak sat untouched in front of me, suddenly tasteless, irrelevant. "My name is Lauren. I'm 32. And in that moment I was exactly who they had decided I was, the failure at the far end of the table. Across from me, my mother dabbed at her eyes as if she were moved, though her fingers gripped her napkin too tightly for it to be real. Tiffany soaked in the attention with effortless grace, her modest smile practiced to perfection. The lighting above us felt harsh, exposing everything. The pity, the discomfort, the quiet relief that none of them were sitting where I was. Under the table, Owen's hand found my knee. Steady. Grounding. His presence was the only thing keeping me still. "Dad," Tiffany said lightly, laughing just enough to seem humble. "Oh, I do," he replied, swirling his wine. "The world needs to know the difference between ambition and wasted potential." His gaze slid to me, and just like that, every eye followed. Heat rose in my chest. Not embarrassment. Not anymore. Something sharper. Something that had been building for years. I'd been the disappointment ever since my design company collapsed 3 years ago. The one who couldn't hack it. The one who married down. A phrase my father made sure Owen heard on our wedding day. Tiffany leaned forward, her pearl earrings catching the light. "You're still, what is it you do again?" "Freelancing." A ripple of laughter moved around the table, thin and uncomfortable. "Something like that," I said, my voice calm despite the tension in my hands. "Well," she added, straightening with quiet satisfaction, "we can't all be vice presidents at Dalton and Ross." My father tapped his glass against hers. "Exactly. You've made this family proud, Tiffany. You've earned your place." For a brief second my mother looked at me. Then she looked away. That hurt more than anything he said. Owen leaned closer, his voice low, controlled. "You want to stay?" I met his eyes. Smiled just barely. "I want to see how far they go." The waiter arrived, pouring champagne with practiced precision. My father raised his glass once more, his voice warm with pride that didn't belong to me. "To Tiffany," he declared, "and to the company that made her who she is." Glasses lifted. Voices rose. Everyone toasted. Everyone but Owen. Everyone but me. The laughter rolled around the table like static, loud, empty, meaningless. I sat there, letting it pass over me, feeling something older rise instead. Not embarrassment. Not even anger. Recognition. Years of it. Being compared. Being dismissed. Being quietly replaced. I had been the daughter who built things out of nothing. Ideas, color, risk. I had failed once, and that single failure had been enough for them to rewrite my entire identity. Tiffany, on the other hand, had always been untouchable. Perfect hair. Perfect title. Perfect reflection of everything they valued. But perfection is fragile. It only lasts as long as no one questions it. Under the table, Owen's hand tightened around mine. Grounded me. Then he leaned in, his voice brushing my ear like a secret. "Time to tell them we bought their company." For a second everything slowed. The clink of silverware. My father's laughter. Tiffany's voice floating on about quarterly wins and corporate milestones. Then I turned to Owen. And steadied. "Dad." He looked at me mid-sip, wildly annoyed at the interruption. I smiled, soft, controlled. "Funny thing about Dalton and Ross," I said. "It changed ownership last week." The laughter didn't fade. It stopped. Silly. My father lowered his glass, frowning. "What are you talking about?" Owen leaned forward, resting his forearms on the table like this was just another deal closing. "She's saying we bought it," he said calmly. "Every share. Every asset." The air shifted. Heavy. Pressurized. Tiffany blinked, confusion cracking into disbelief. "You're lying." Owen gave a small, polite smile. "You'll find out Monday morning. We'll be at your board meeting." He tapped his watch lightly. "Your assistant already confirmed it, after receiving our notice." My father's glass hit the table with a sharp, uneven thud. Wine sloshed dangerously close to the edge. "You what?" I leaned back, pull steady now. You said you were proud of your real daughter, I said quietly. You might want to be careful with that word. I held his gaze. Turns out the one you overlooked just signed your paycheck. Silence followed. Not awkward. Precise. Earned. Owen lifted his champagne glass, casual as ever. To family. No one moved. No one spoke. For the first time in my life I didn't need them to. I barely slept that night. The silence from the restaurant clung to me, replaying in fragments as I stood by the kitchen window the next morning. My phone buzzed endlessly on the counter. Missed calls from my father, messages from Tiffany stacking one after another. Owen sipped his coffee, watching me over the rim of the mug. They'll come, he said. I glanced at him. You sound sure. People like that don't sit with loss, he replied calmly. They confront it. Right on cue the gate camera chimed. A black SUV rolled up the driveway, followed by a white coupe. I exhaled slowly. Of course they did. Owen set his mug down and adjusted his tie with quiet precision, like he was preparing for a meeting, not a confrontation. The doorbell rang. Insistent. I opened it. My father stood there, face flushed, a stack of papers clenched in his hand. You think this is funny? He snapped. You humiliate me in public and now you're spreading lies? Lies. I stepped aside. Come in. Let's talk. Tiffany brushed past me without waiting, her perfume cutting through the air like a statement. Dad, don't waste your time, she said. There's no way they bought Dalton and Ross. The board would have told me. Owen leaned casually against the counter. They did. She scoffed, already pulling out her phone. Please. Then she saw it. Her expression changed in real time. Color drained. Confidence cracked. Her eyes locked on the subject line. Ownership transfer notice. Dalton and Ross Enterprises. This can't be real, she whispered. It is, Owen said evenly. The chairman was ready to exit. We made the right offer. He let the words settle. No theatrics. No gloating. Just fact. And for the first time Tiffany had nothing to say. You'd be surprised, Owen added calmly, how many doors open when you treat people with respect. My father turned to me, his voice unsteady with anger. You planned this. Behind my back. I met his gaze without flinching. You made sure I had nothing left to lose. Remember? I said quietly. You laughed when my company failed. You told me I'd never understand business. I let the silence carry that truth. So I learned, I continued. Just not where you were looking. He slammed the folder onto the counter, papers spilling like something breaking loose. You think this makes you better than us? No, I said steady. It makes me free. Tiffany stepped forward, her composure cracking, tears threatening. You couldn't stand that I finally made them proud. You had to ruin everything. Ruin? I cut in, something sharper rising now. You turned me into a punchline for years. You and Dad built that distance, not me. You didn't want a sister. You wanted an audience. Owen stepped in beside me, his tone even but precise. For what it's worth, Tiffany, we didn't buy the company to ruin you. We bought it because it was being run into the ground. My father's jaw tightened. You don't talk to me like that. Owen didn't blink. You've spent your life mistaking fear for respect. That ends now. The room stilled. Even the clock on the wall felt louder. I looked at my father, really looked this time. Not the authority. Not the voice that filled rooms. Just a man who had always needed control. Dad, I said quietly, this isn't revenge. It's consequence. I'm just the part you didn't plan for. His eyes moved between me and the papers, searching for something that wasn't there anymore. Then he turned and walked out. Tiffany hesitated, then followed, stopping just long enough to whisper. You'll regret this. The door shut hard behind them. Silence settled again, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was clear. Owen's arm slid around my waist. You handled that exactly right. I exhaled slowly, watching their cars disappear down the street. It doesn't feel like I thought it would. He smiled faintly. It won't. Not at first. The next morning the city looked sharper somehow. Glass, steel, sunlight cutting clean through everything. As we drove to Dalton and Ross headquarters, I went over the facts again. Declining profits. Mismanaged spending. Quiet warnings ignored. Owen and I hadn't rushed this, we'd built toward it. Carefully. Deliberately. Inside, the boardroom buzzed with tension. Floor-to-ceiling glass framed the skyline. The company logo gleamed across the far wall, familiar but no longer theirs. Owen and I walked in together. Heads turned. At the far end of the table sat my father and Tiffany. He looked furious. She looked like she was still hoping this wasn't real. Owen broke the silence. Good morning. As of last Friday, my wife and I are the majority shareholders of Dalton and Ross. Thank you for being here. Tiffany's pen hit the table. You can't just walk in here and act like you own the place. Owen raised an eyebrow. We're not acting. A few quiet reactions rippled through the room. My father stood, voice sharp. You don't understand what you've done. This company took me 30 years to build. I met him evenly. 30 years of favoritism, mismanagement, and ego. You didn't build stability, you built control. He stepped forward, voice low. You think you can run this? You couldn't even run your own life. Owen's voice cut in, calm as ever. She rebuilt her life from nothing. That's leadership. Tiffany turned to the board, desperation creeping in. You all know me. You know what I've done here. Are you seriously going to let outsiders take over? The CFO cleared his throat. With respect, Tiffany, profits have declined for 3 consecutive quarters. The words landed hard. I leaned forward slightly. I've been watching from the outside. Overspending, internal favoritism, neglected teams. That stops now. My father's hands clenched. So what, now you fire us? I paused, then shook my head. No, I said calmly. I'm not you. That caught the room. You'll stay on as consultants for 6 months, I continued. Help transition things properly. After that, we move forward without the damage. Tiffany's voice broke. You're doing this to hurt me. No, I said softer now. I'm doing this so you understand what your choices actually cost. My father sank back into his chair, the fight draining out of him. For the first time, he had nothing to say. Owen turned to the board again. Effective immediately, we begin restructuring. Fair compensation. Ethical leadership. Long-term stability. He glanced at me. My wife will lead the transition. Every eye in the room shifted. And this time no one was laughing. Applause rose around the room, uncertain at first, like people testing whether it was safe. Then it grew, steady, undeniable, as if something long overdue had finally been allowed to happen. I stood there taking it in. Not victory. Not satisfaction. Something quieter. Peace. For years I had imagined this moment differently. Louder. Sharper. I thought proving them wrong would feel like a finish line. But standing there, I realized something I hadn't expected. I didn't need their approval. I just needed to stop chasing it. When the meeting adjourned, chairs scraped softly against the floor. Conversations started in low tones. I walked past my father without slowing. He didn't look up. Tiffany sat frozen, her eyes locked on her phone, scrolling through messages that were already shifting away from her. Loyalty, I'd learned, moves fast when power changes hands. Owen held the door open for me. You okay? He asked. I let out a small breath and nodded. Better than I've ever been. Outside, sunlight spilled across the glass facade. For once, it didn't feel harsh. It felt earned. The next 2 weeks moved quickly. We relocated temporarily to the executive penthouse while renovations started on our home. The transition at the company was already in motion. Meetings, restructuring plans, long conversations with teams who had been overlooked for years. The headlines followed. New leadership promises reform. A different kind of ownership. A company rebuilding itself. Investors came back. Employees smiled again. Tentatively at first, then more openly, like they were remembering what it felt like to be valued. But success doesn't quiet resentment. It gives it a microphone. That night, the city stretched below us in a grid of lights. I stood by the window, finally allowing myself a moment of stillness when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then I answered. Congratulations, sis. Tiffany. Her voice was smooth, but the bitterness underneath it was unmistakable. You really think they love you? She continued. The board? The employees? The media? I didn't respond. You'll fall, she said after a pause. Just like before. And when you do, I'll be there to remind everyone who the real heir is. I exhaled slowly. You're exhausting yourself, Tiffany, I said calmly. You should try something different for once. You took everything from me, she snapped. My position. My reputation. No, I cut in, my tone steady. You lost those. I just stopped pretending you deserved them. Silence. Then the line went dead. Owen glanced up from his laptop. Problem. I set my phone down. Just someone who doesn't know when to let go. The next morning proved that point. My assistant rushed into my office, pale, tablet in hand. You need to see this. I took it. A video was already playing. A polished news segment. Clean editing. Professional tone. And completely fabricated. Claims of fraud. Accusations that the buyout was illegal. Carefully worded doubt designed to spread fast and stick. I watched it once. Then again. Owen stepped in behind me, his expression tightening as he saw the screen. She did this. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I set the tablet down, my pulse steady, my thoughts clear. No panic. No anger. Just focus. Then we handle it, I said, the right way. I called my driver and headed straight for the company's press room. By noon, every major outlet was there. Cameras lined the space. Lights burned bright. The air buzzed with anticipation, the kind that builds when a story is about to break one way or the other. I walked in without hesitation. Head high. Shoulders steady. False narratives travel fast, I began, my voice calm but carrying, especially when the truth threatens something fragile. A ripple moved through the room. But facts, I continued, don't need volume. They just need light. I nodded once. The screen behind me came alive. Documents. Contracts. Time-stamped approvals. Legal clearances. Every step of the acquisition laid out with precision. No gaps. No gray areas. Just truth. Then came the clip. The former chairman, clear as day, looking straight into the camera. It was her integrity that convinced me to sell. The room shifted. Murmurs. Pens moving faster. Cameras clicking like distant thunder. And then, in the back, I saw her. Tiffany. Sunglasses on, but not enough to hide the tension in her jaw. I didn't pause. Family can be complicated, I said, letting the words settle. But it also teaches you something valuable, what pride costs when it goes unchecked. Silence fell again. This company isn't about revenge, I finished. It's about rebuilding something that can actually last. For a moment no one moved. Then the applause came, strong, certain. By the time I stepped away from the podium, Tiffany was already gone. Outside the air felt different. Cleaner. Owen was waiting at the bottom of the steps, hands in his pockets, a quiet smile on his face. You didn't just clear your name, he said. You changed the narrative. I looked out at the skyline, the same city that had once watched me fail. Funny, I murmured. I used to think success meant proving them wrong. I glanced at him. Now I think it means not becoming them. That night, the city stretched beneath us from the balcony, lights flickering like a living thing. Owen handed me a small velvet box. I raised an eyebrow. This isn't your style. Open it. Inside wasn't jewelry. It was a key. I looked up. A new building, he said. For your company. Your name. Your vision. My chest tightened, not with pride but something quieter. And Dalton and Ross? I asked. He smiled. You saved it. Now let it stand without needing you to prove anything. I turned back to the city. 1,000 windows. 1,000 lives. 1,000 chances to build something better. Then let's build something that lasts, I said softly. Something that remembers what it took to get here. Owen nodded. Together. The wind shifted, cool, steady, final. A month later a letter arrived. From my mother. She'd left my father. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Just, finally. She wrote that watching me had forced her to face things she'd ignored for years. That courage, she realized, isn't something you wait for. It's something you decide. Tiffany, I heard, had taken a position at a smaller firm. Quieter. Less certain. Maybe learning, finally, what it feels like to start without an audience. My father retired to his lake house. Alone. Some consequences echo. Others settle. Not everything heals. Some things just teach you how to live differently. And sometimes the real victory isn't what you take back. It's what you choose to build next.